FileMaker goes free for single users? This is MacVoices. This edition of MacVoices is supported by the MacVoices Dispatch, our weekly newsletter to keep you up on all the latest from MacVoices. Watch or listen to MacVoices straight from your email client. Sign up at macvoices.com/newsletter and stay up to date. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. FileMaker recently announced that they will be making their database application free for single users. The implications of that for software developers, including one of our panelists, and you, the end user, are all the topic of this MacVoices discussion. Let's go back and let the panel do the talking. Hey, we're going to start to run out of time. There's one story I definitely wanted to get in here because I wanted to hear Jim's comments on it. And that is, some of Claris's plans for FileMaker. And I think way back somewhere on a MacVoices show, may have been with Glenn Fleischman, that it was brought up that Claris was going to make FileMaker free for individuals. And then in our private Slack, Jeff brought up that this may be in response to AirTable. Not being an AirTable user, I can't comment on either one of those. So I'm going to turn to Jeff and Jim and say, guys, what do you think about this?
Well, when I saw the news about this, my first thought was, well, of course. I mean, if FileMaker wants to compete with Airtable, then this is something they have to do. And one of the key things that they talk about in all this is a web access interface. So, yeah, at this point, when I hear people talking about wanting to build just like on the fly a fairly sophisticated database, they're talking about doing something in Airtable. So that to me is like a serious competitive issue for FileMaker. Well, Claris. So yeah, it just seemed like a natural thing that they would do. But yeah, I'm really curious how this impacts you, Jim.
As am I as well. I saw this on a FileMaker developer forum about 5 months ago, I think, and it was kind of weird because I was like, even on that forum. Kind of the story was, mentioned, and then there wasn't even any commentary there and has not been since then. I haven't seen it mentioned. And I thought, maybe I just imagined it. That can't be right. And then Adam came out with this story. It was like the same story. So it's like, okay, yeah, I guess it's true. Although it's interesting, again, doesn't seem like it's gotten any legs. None of the other media I've seen have picked it up. I'm not sure how this would really help them compete with Airtable. Airtable has a different range of free versus not free. Airtable is free for small databases, and then it gets, then I think it's like $15 per user. Which I'm not sure, FileMaker is pretty expensive too. So what FileMaker is doing is they're saying, okay, it's just free for non-web, on your local computer.
Mm-hmm. And then single user
single user things. And then for multi-user stuff, then they're not changing anything, and it's quite expensive. So, certainly before, I think FileMaker must have been getting 0 new users on the local, for single users, because it was basically like $550 minimum to get in. So I don't think anybody, they weren't getting any new users if somebody wasn't already using it. They wouldn't be starting. I just don't know. I think it depends how it's going to affect me. maybe it'll put me out of business. I don't know. I mean, it's arguably FileMaker is the biggest competitor, and they just went from $550 to free. Hard to compete with free. And most of my business is single users and not multi-user stuff. So I don't know. I know that, interestingly, I don't hear about AirTable much. I don't hear from people, saying, comparing my product to AirTable. Interestingly, though, on like the FileMaker forum that I lurk on, and I've been to some of the local meetings before the pandemic, and that's apparently something. So that group that I lurk on is all FileMaker consultants. So they're people that make a living making FileMaker applications for other people. And there was one that did a presentation, and I guess he started doing Airtable consultation, and he said that's now 95% of his business, and all the customers want Airtable, and they don't want FileMaker. And so I guess that was good for him because he was getting business, but he was also frustrating because, contrary to one of you said, Airtable's pretty low end. It won't do much. And so he's constantly knocking into like customers want this and that. And he's like, I can easily do this in FileMaker, but it's difficult or impossible to do in Airtable.
Yeah, I think one of the compelling features of Airtable is its tight integration with Zapier, which is a very popular tool for a lot of businesses.
Well, I think I don't know about that. My impression is that it's just really easy to get into. You don't have to buy anything. You can just it's kind of like starting to use Google Sheets. You can just set it up online. Doesn't cost anything to get started. It's instantly multi-user, and a free version of FileMaker isn't going to change any of those things.
I don't think so.
And FileMaker, is really complicated at this point, which these consultants like because they become experts. And they use all the ins and outs and this and that. So people need consultants. The other thing is I hear these consultants like constantly complaining that Claris doesn't promote FileMaker, that nobody knows about it, which is kind of even again I said I don't hear about Airtable. I hear about FileMaker a little bit more, mostly from people that are like, tired of paying for FileMaker updates, so let's try Panorama. That's mostly what I hear about FileMaker, or FileMaker is getting too complicated and too expensive. I had FileMaker 14, and now they're up to 18 or 19, and I wanted because they definitely FileMaker got into this. Every year we're going to charge you another $150, or now they've gone to pretty much subscription, but it's an expensive subscription. And they don't improve it very, very much. I mean, when's the last time you heard about some blockbuster FileMaker release? So that's kind of the interesting thing. Like, okay, well, what is their plan? Are they going to throw some kind of marketing dollars at this so people will know about it? I don't know. I mean, it could be that this just goes out there and means nothing. I just don't know.
Well, some of this, Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, but some of this goes back to a discussion we had weeks, if not months ago, about databases and how there was a time that on the Apple II, AppleWorks, it came with a database program, and there were a lot of really interesting and great database programs out there, and they all kind of went away in favor of the more specialized one or two trick pony apps that they're database driven underneath, but they have a better interface on top that is built by the developer. And I just wonder, where FileMaker is going to fit in this area. I mean, I think of ProVue as a professional tool. I think of FileMaker as a professional tool. Maybe not necessarily for a single user,
I have no idea about Airtable. I've never even looked at Airtable, so I can't comment.
Airtable's pretty fracking cool.
Okay,
No.
but is it powerful?
Yeah, you can do a lot of stuff with Airtable.
It's like a spreadsheet. It's kind of cool for what it is. It's
Yeah.
a lot like Google Sheets, and it's mostly
if
like
Google
a
Sheets was a database.
Yes, exactly. And what I like to, one of the things that I did a long time ago, back in the 80s, was I had a marketing slogan for Panorama, was that it was the database that thinks it's a spreadsheet. And that was, I wish I had not done that. It was a very catchy thing that got attention. So that part was great. And people would come back to it and, repeat that to us, 20 years after we stopped using it. But the problem was it did confuse people, because then they would be like, why doesn't it do this spreadsheet thing that, they had some spreadsheet feature in mind, and like, it doesn't do that. It's like, yeah, because it's not a spreadsheet. So what I would say, the difference between a database and a spreadsheet is in a spreadsheet, each cell is more or less, independent. There's no, you may arrange things in row and columns, but the underlying spreadsheet software doesn't know about that. It doesn't, so in a database, the cells they're structured in a certain way. So each column means something. Or you have a name column. You don't put prices in the name column. And the database knows that, so it can do things like say, oh, I'm not going to let you put a number in the name column, or, put a name in the number column, things like that. So there's a structure to it, and that a spreadsheet doesn't have. So that's basically what the difference is. But they both have, they do both have rows and columns, and it's Airtable is like Google Sheets in that it has rows and columns, and it lives online. There's no local document. It's an online thing that lives in your web browser. There's no application. It lives in your web browser. So there's no installing. There's no updates. It's just a thing in your web browser, like email or Google Sheets or Google Docs. It's basically a web browser version of a database. So it mostly works in rows and columns. They have a very limited layout ability, and they have a limited automation ability.
Well, they have Zapier support. And that's the killer feature right there, which gives it much more than limited automation. And if FileMaker actually is, as I am hypothesizing, trying to compete with Airtable, in this sense, they need to start supporting Zapier, because that's the go-to for so many companies.
They did that a long time ago. That's what Claris Connect is. But I
well, there's no Zapier support for FileMaker. I'm certain of it. I just double checked because I didn't want to misspeak.
I think, I don't know, I could be wrong. I don't think that is the big selling point of Airtable. I think that's
it's
probably
a key
used
feature
by
for a lot of people, though.
I think that's a fraction of people. Most of the people I think that are using that have no clue what Zapier is. And, Zapier is like shortcuts. How many people use shortcuts? Not very many.
I would lovingly disagree with you on the Zapier part.
The kind of people that use Zapier are the same kind of people that use shortcuts.
I think more people know about shortcuts than about Zapier.
Well, there you go.
That could be. The Zapier user groups that I've been involved in, there's definitely a diverse group of people from all over the world that are very into it.
I have no doubt about that. I think that is, sure, there's a passionate, group of people, but I don't think that's where most of Airtable's, the main thing is like people that don't know anything can just go and set up an Airtable and like, oh, there, I've got a database and I can give you a link and you can put names in, and I can put names in and we're done. And, they're not necessarily doing automation or anything. And even with Zapier, I think the level of automation is way, different than what you can do with Panorama or FileMaker, where the automation is really tightly integrated.
I can't argue that. Yep. I agree.
Yeah, this may not mean much to a lot of people. Because again, I think it's a really interesting move, and maybe both of you will shoot me down, but I just wonder if there is I wonder how many people out there are just dying to build a database in something like FileMaker.
Well,
that haven't already found a solution.
Exactly. That's the ultimate problem with the database market. It's a market that, like in the 80s, everybody wanted to do that because there were no solutions. But, so a lot of people were building their own accounting package or, whatever. Well, now they just go buy a program that does whatever it is that they want to do. And databases they're DIY tools. And they're like, okay, if you want to organize your data and you want it done exactly the way that you want it done, and you don't want to just take an off-the-shelf solution. Well, the number of people that want to do that is shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. There are still people that definitely want to do that, but it's not a growth area because there's so much, and obviously, the biggest part of the market is, SQL and NoSQL tools. And web-based stuff. It's it's not FileMaker or Airtable and all in the greater database world, that they are like look at tools Panorama they never heard of, FileMaker and Airtable they just look at those cute little toys they think that's a database aren't they adorable. They're using Oracle and Postgres and that kind of stuff, which is all,
that's a totally different game right there.
But it's still databases. And that's the thing. It's all, that's how most of the web backend stuff is done with those kind of tools. So, there's a ton of, REST interfaces, and GraphQL is an upcoming thing, which I would like to add to Panorama at some point. So, there's a huge market, but it's all spread out and it's, moved in a lot of different directions and it's moved away from the Panorama FileMaker kind of, having an app on a computer, even if it's shared.
Claire in the chat room says, my mother's partner works with Microsoft and SAP for databases on the corporate level. Have not heard about FileMaker. Not surprising.
Yeah, not surprising at all. And for since I've got this opportunity or whatever, I should mention that Panorama is quite a different app in a fundamental way from really all of these, because Panorama is an in-memory database. So what Panorama, all these other ones, they work with data on the disk, and they're just shuffling little bits of data in and out. There are some in-memory high-end SQL databases, but certainly at this end of the market, Panorama is the only one. And so Panorama loads all your data into memory, and then it's super, super fast and flexible. And you can do things, like run regular expression searches on data as fast as just simple text search. And it doesn't need any indexing. So, we do have, people that get into, find out about Panorama, they tend to think it's their secret weapon. And, I'm in on I'm in on this, secret thing that gives me the edge over my competitors. So that, that's a plus for us, that we're not really, although it's sort of lumped in the same thing as FileMaker and Airtable, there's definitely things that Panorama does that those products couldn't touch at all. The one problem is that a lot of people don't even imagine that they can do those things. So they're not looking for those features. They're just struggling without them. And, so you get, some people that do discover Panorama are like, oh my gosh, this is the solution that I never even dreamed existed. So I wasn't looking for it. So people aren't looking for it, so they don't find it.
Or,
Eric, do you have anything to? Eric's a Panorama user, so.
Oh, yeah, I didn't realize, Eric. Yeah, what's your take on this?
I mean, I certainly agree with the speed thing, and I very much agree with the, using it for developing the whole DIY thing. Otherwise, I wouldn't have a goat milking competition database written in Panorama, and fills out the forms, gets all of the results. They look really nice. So yeah, it's and
there's still people at the university using Panorama, or is that not happening anymore?
In a couple of spots, the one place where we were using it, they spent like millions to do a whole system, and then felt that they really should use that system, and so your tool doesn't get used for that particular form anymore. But it costs a lot to replace it. So, I guess the question I would be, the thing I'd be curious about is, with whatever system's out there, if it gains in popularity, is that enough to at least get more people interested in collecting data and sharing it? Enough interested that they turn around and look for better solutions. I still run into a lot of people that use Google Sheets as a database, and it's a horrible experience. But it's in every school district out there.
Yeah, because it's part of the suite.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would like people to get to the point where they feel like there should be a better option, and then go look for it. And I don't know what it would take to get them to do that.
Yeah, school districts are tough.
Somebody that knows what they're doing, Eric, is what it would take. But I don't. That's not disparaging school districts or anyone else, but sometimes it's just a case of you don't even know what you need and the tools that are out there, and then you run across one, and it's like, oh my God, I've been looking for something like this.
And sometimes it's also, I have probably 1 million Google Sheets that are automated by now. And the reason for it is it starts very simple, and it starts with like very simple things and then expands. And for simple things, Google Sheets is great. The question is, where is that point where you have to say, well, this is now getting into an area where it might not be so great.
Well, and where does it get
people that feel like they've invested so much time and energy that they keep slogging along with the wrong tool?
Yeah. That's because unfortunately, once they hit that point, Patrice, now you go and look for that solution. You've got to do the building all over again, and then you have to train people, and then you have to migrate the data. And so, like Jeff said, they just end up like, oh my God, I don't have time for that. When I can waste my time here and do it and get it done. So.
Another big player in that space is Excel, which isn't a database, but people do the same thing that Patrice just said. And maybe Google Sheets is starting to eat into a lot of that. But, there's a lot of people who are just like, oh, I've got this program that looks like I could put data in it. So we'll just start typing data into it. And
that's what happened in England. They did in England, and something failed for a week.
Exactly.
Wasn't that their COVID database that then ran out of
Right.
rows?
The COVID database. They wrote it in Excel, and they woke up
exactly.
That's insane.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Well, Jim, I have a prediction for the database. market space. And I am serious here with this prediction I'm about to toss out. ProVue is going to outlive FileMaker. And I think that's because the relevance that ProVue has is greater than the relevance that FileMaker will ultimately have. And yeah, so you were here before FileMaker was a thing, and you'll still be here after it's gone.
That's a nice thought, but are people still using COBOL? So
that's true. But
you
I
know,
think you're going to outlive them.
FileMaker is a weird thing because what is Apple doing with it? Why does Apple have this company that sells a cross-platform database? And you know, that's something that I hear, and sometimes in these FileMaker forums that they worry about, that like someday Tim Cook will wake up and go, "What? Get rid of that."
I thought it was already spun off.
You know, it is not spun off. It is a wholly owned subsidiary of Apple. It's just as much an Apple as an AirPod or
Beats.
anything else.
I thought when Claris took it over, that changed.
Claris has always been 100% Apple.
Gotcha.
I mean, they run it sort of, it's in this weird limbo.
Yeah.
Most people, you know, even people like you that are really, you know, connected aren't aware of it. Very few people are really aware that, you know, it's really Apple FileMaker, because they don't run it that way. I mean, like it never was marketed as Apple FileMaker.
Right. I mean, it was part of Apple, but when they bought it years ago, and just you're right, they just kept it.
Well, originally it was from a company called Neshoba. Yes, in the late '80s, it was a separate company, but then Apple bought it through Claris, but they never called it Apple FileMaker, and they seem to sort of disguise, or I don't know. They don't emphasize. You know, they don't put it in the App Store, and I'm pretty sure it wouldn't. You know, the way they sell it, if it was a third party, they wouldn't be allowed to put it in App Store. One thing I wonder about is, you know, there is a FileMaker version in FileMaker Go that's in the iOS App Store, and it's got a programming language, which isn't allowed. So that's an interesting thing.
Wow, you're not kidding. FileMaker's not in the App Store.
Nope, never is.
Wow.
Yeah, I've always wondered that too. What was the purpose of Apple's acquisition of that? It always seems kind of out of place to me.
Well, I think, you know, they bought it in the early 90s. And, you know, I think at that point they were concerned that there would be no database for the Macintosh platform.
Okay.
And, you know, that's when they had a suite. They had that. They had an Apple Works. They had, you know, so yeah, that was when Apple was like desperately like, you know, we want to make sure there's not nothing. But yeah, why has it continued? And it's cross-platform. You know, it doesn't really. It's never featured, you know, you've never seen FileMaker as a showcase for, you know, new technologies in Cocoa or anything else, because it's cross-platform. So it's kind of lowest common denominator.
Yeah, I feel like Bento got more coverage than FileMaker did for a long time.
Yep.
Well,
Bento,
it was
Bento was a lot more approachable, though, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was much.
more
streamlined.
Well,
but it was also a lot more
streamlined
limited.
to the point that it didn't do much of anything,
and affordable too.
It was more affordable, but it was really bare bones. But it was sort of a showcase for Apple technology. I think it was written for Cocoa. But it was it was an island. It wouldn't, import or export. You couldn't transfer to FileMaker or anything else. I think they eventually finally added text export, but it didn't have that for a long time. So, it was kind of like, that was a toy, but it was pretty. It was real pretty. And, I do still get people that are like, oh yeah, I liked Bento. Wish somebody would bring that back.
Well, I get why it was appealing to so many people. It wasn't intimidating like FileMaker can be to get started.
Yep.
But the problem is you could get started. You could get started like that, and in 10 minutes, you've learned everything you need to know and everything you can ever know, because there's nothing more to learn about it. You're done.
Claire in the chat room brings up an interesting point, though. We mostly use Google Sheets for film and TV projects due to the email and calendar integrations. Most people know how to use it. I've used Airtable with a large broadcast company for events.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah,
there are a lot of different drivers to why people pick different pieces of software.
Absolutely. Yeah,
for sure.
Hey, we're way over time, guys, but thank you. This has been a really interesting discussion. Thank you, Jim and Eric and Jeff, for a little bit of insight into this, and Patrice too. I think a lot of us, the rest of us, had to sit out because we just don't have the experience. But I feel like I've learned a few things, and I hope other people have too.
Mm-hmm. A lot more.
Yeah,
very, very enlightening conversation.
Yeah, let's go around the room, let folks know where they can find you, and then we're out of here. And I'm going to reverse it this time, especially since the order has been changing as people have turned their cameras on and off again. So, Andrew, I'm going to start with you. Somehow you always end up down the bottom left or bottom right corner. So this time I'm elevating you to the first spot.
Slacker.
Awesome.
Cindy Brady.
Troublemakers. That's their corner.
Yeah.
Which makes it weird that I'm not there.
That's Cindy Brady on the bottom
True.
right.
True. And I don't even want to think of Andrew as Cindy Brady. No, let's not do that.
With his hair in curls.
With the girls.
You can find me on Twitter at Apple, or no, sorry. Got that screwed up. Twitter, I'm at Andrew or not, but then I'm also at appleinsider.com, where I'm writing about all the cool, fun stuff news nowadays.
Yep. Great stuff.
Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, I think the Cindy Brady thing just completely threw you. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Brittany Smith, great to have you. Thanks so much for your insights into all the temperature stuff. Where can folks find you?
Thank you for having me. You can find me if you're looking for nerdy Twitter stuff when I tweet at ADD Liberator. That is also where you can find my YouTube videos. And I have put some out on iOS 16 and will continue to do so for the next little bit. And yeah, those are the big ones. Thanks, Chuck.
Great. Thank you, Britt. Mr. Sklar from his new basement hideout. Where can folks find you?
In my new basement hideout, obviously. You walked into that. Do the show, Dave. I should be good for a Thursday. When did I leave? I never do. And good to be here. I guess next week we'll be playing with our toys and talking about that. So I'm excited for Friday to come and see how that goes. I'm ready to live on the I call it Notification Island. I forgot what they really called it, but that's what
Dynamic Island.
Yeah, it's going to be Notification Island. It's a place where just you get all your notifications. So yeah, good to be here.
Great, thank you, Eric Bolden. Thank you for being here as well. Where can folks find you?
Thank you. I can be found at EA Bolden on Twitter. And that's probably the best at the moment, as I hide from everybody else on the planet.
I know that feeling. Yeah, great. Hey, thanks for showing up. Really appreciate it. Patrice Brend'Amour. I see her. I see her eyes slowly going down.
Yeah, very slowly.
Yeah. Thank you for being here and taking up some of your vacation by hanging out on MacVoices Live. What's the best place for folks to locate you?
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. I was looking forward to my vacation so I can be on MacVoices Live because I usually can't. The best places to find me, I'm every week on the British Tech Network on the Big Show on Thursdays and also on the Mac Show on Fridays. We talk about different things like non-Apple tech versus Apple tech. You can find everything I'm doing, all the social medias, the projects, the podcasts, all of that on thepatrice.com. And if you want to listen to something that is not tech related, and if you want to listen to something about food and food related stories and memories, I have an interview show called Foodie Flashback at foodieflashback.com.
Great. Thank you, Patrice. Thank you. Jeff Gamet, back from WordCamp. What's the best place for folks to locate you?
Well, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. I'm Jay Gamet everywhere, basically. Excuse me. Also, I want to point out, Patrice, I am so impressed that you were able to stay awake through the FileMaker discussion, because it would be so easy for someone to just nod off through that, and you did not. Well done. Anyhow, okay, so
you made it interesting.
Well, that was all Jim. Let's see, what shows am I on? Here on Tuesdays, Thursdays on the big show early in the day, and then in the evenings on In Touch with iOS with Dave, and then on Fridays for the Mac show, and then also the Context Machine with Brian Chaffin, and then occasionally other stuff comes up too.
Great. Thank you for being here, Jeff. We missed you.
Well, thanks for letting me back in.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Jim Ray, thank you for all your database wisdom. You educated me on a number of things that I wasn't aware of. So thank you for that. Where can folks find you?
Well, you can go to my website, or my company's website, which is ProVue.com, ProVue.com. And since we talked about Panorama, I'll recommend, if people are interested, there's a great demo movie there. So go visit that, and you can listen to me talk about it for 20 minutes and show you more about why it's special. And then you can also reach me on Twitter at ProVueJim, same spelling, PROVUE, on Twitter.
Great. Thank you, Jim. Really appreciate it. Last but absolutely not least, if the Troublemaker corner is in the bottom right, then I guess the angelic corner is up in the top left. and
that puts Dave.
Yeah, that puts Dave Ginsburg.
That
right
checks
there.
out.
Yes.
Chuck, you're on top left for me. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
Me too.
Yeah, me too.
Thanks for having me, Chuck. You can find me at In Touch with iOS, intouchwithios.com. Andrew's going to be back on the show this week. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Along with Jeff will be back after being off, and Warren. And YouTube channel, youtube.com/In Touch with iOS. I'm on the Mac show on Fridays, and I'm on Twitter at DaveG65. Thanks again, Chuck.
Great. Thank you, David. Thank you. Folks, I'm the angelic Chuck Joyner. This is Mac Voices Live. We do this. I can't even say that was a straight face. We do this Tuesday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, whatever time that is, wherever you are. We'd love to have you join us or come back. I definitely want to say thanks to the chat room. They've been very active tonight. Several different conversations going on, some about what we were talking about, some about some other things. So thank you guys. It's always a pleasure to see you. With that, we'll be back soon. As always, thanks for watching.
Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with Mac Voices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices, or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.